This machine was supposed to be a quick restoration for use in an upcoming episode of 64 Commodore, but instead, it almost broke me. I needed a variety of Commodore 64s for an upcoming episode on the evolution of the 64 over its years of production, and this seemed like a natural place to start. It's a 1982 Silver Label Commodore 64 with a 326298 motherboard in it. I pulled this one out at first, but it's seen better days. Yeah, this is not going to be a quick restoration. If I want to get this done in time for the video, this one will have to wait for a full restoration later. So instead I pulled out this one, the one we're looking at today. And clearly it's had its case bottom replaced at some point, but we can fix that. Changing machines was supposed to save me time, but instead what was supposed to be a 4-hour repair spiraled into days of work. At one point, I wasn't even sure I'd be able to fix it at all. Not work 12/1/1995. There's a $5 Goodwill price tag on it. So let's see what happens. This is not even what I would consider a black screen because there's no video signal whatsoever. To me, a black screen means that there's a video signal coming from the video section, but the CPU is not running code, so it's not sending any output. This is just dead. So let's open it up and see what's going on. Not too bad working. It is the right board. Almost everything's soldered. Yay. And this is a Rev C board. Got a little bit of corrosion going on here too. So let's get this board out of here and see what else we see. R9 VIC-2. Five volts. Good news, we're seeing 5 volts on the CPU and ROM, so we know the 5 volts from the external power supply is getting through the switch and the connector and onto those ICs. Okay, gonna remove the SID. We don't need it for diagnostics. I should have removed it earlier. We need the PLA in the processor, we need the VIC, so I'd take these all off if they were easy to get off, and I'd certainly take the CIAs off if I could take them off. With that removed, I'm going to hook up the dead test and see what happens. Nope, still dead. So next, we need to check the other 5-volt rail on this machine. So the Commodore 64 doesn't just run on the 5 volts DC that comes from the external power brick. The main one powers most of the system, but there's a second isolated 5-volt rail called 5-volt CAN generated from the 9-volt AC input. This separate 5 volts is specifically for the VIC-2 video chip, keeping interference from the rest of the system from affecting the output. Now this fuse is only for the 5 volts and the 12 volts generated on the main board from the 9 volts AC coming from the external power supply. So never assume that just because you have 5 volts on some of the chips that the fuse is not blown. First things first, we'll check the fuse, and sure enough, it's blown. Interestingly, somebody's replaced the regular fuse with an overrated 3-amp one, and that's still blown, so clearly this machine has to be drawing extra power somewhere. The schematic calls for a 1-amp fuse, so I installed one of the proper rating. Hey, future Mike here. While editing, I decided to pull the fuses from some other Silver Label 64s and just see what Commodore was installing at the factory. All the ones I checked actually had 1.5-amp fuses, still larger than the rated 1-amp on the schematic, but half the 3-amps we found here. Yep, so the fuse is good. Okay, great. The replacement fuse didn't blow, but we clearly still have a problem. We still have a black screen. So let's take a look at the voltage regulator. We got 12 volts coming into the 5-volt regulator. Put only 0.3 volts out, so that's got to be bad. I already checked the brake rectifier. It's fine. And we have no power to the VIC. No wonder we don't have a video signal. And there's the problem. The voltage regulator is completely shot. It's supposed to be putting out about 5 volts, but I'm only seeing 0.3 volts here. And without this 5-volt supply, the VIC-2 is not getting any power at all. Easy fix, right? We just pop in a new regulator and we should be good to go. Except things are not going to be this simple. Not even close. So at this point, we've got power to the VIC-2, so let's see if we have any output. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We have a video signal, just still a black screen. That's getting really hot really fast. So that got fried for a reason. This usually means that something on the board is drawing too much power. Bad IC maybe, shorted capacitor, something's off. The weird thing though, nothing else seemed to be getting abnormally hot other than the voltage regulator, of course. I've personally never dealt with a power issue on these early boards before, but clearly somebody had changed the voltage regulator. There were signs of soldering, the board's a little bit brown around it, and the heatsink that's normally there is gone. The thing is, this is perfectly normal for this board, especially with no heatsink installed. But I didn't know that yet. I just assumed that something was overloading the regulator. And that assumption sent me straight down a rabbit hole that would waste a lot of time. At this stage, though, things were moving along pretty much normally. So then tested the VIC-2, the PLA, and the processor using the backbit chip tester. They are fine. Single flash on here, so if I turn it on, now the thing about a single flash on this is it can be RAM, but it can also be any of these other ICs. They can be dragging down the bus, just causing bus contention. So to start off with though, this RAM gets hot, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. I do not believe U24 is the RAM that a single flash indicates. If I remember right, that's U9, but we're going to go ahead and change that out real quick. Then we'll take a look and see what the other problems might be. Okay, so we got that RAM chip replaced. So next, what we need to do is take a look at what we're getting on the screen. That's good news. So we've gone to 4 flashes. So that means we probably actually do have another bad RAM chip. Who knows what else we're going to find, but we're making progress, and progress is all we can ask for, right? First, we replaced one bad RAM chip because it was getting hot. Then, after further testing, 2 more were replaced, although one of those turned out to be fine. Next, we found an issue with the reset circuit. All right, so pin 40 is reset. When I turn this on, it should stay low for a little bit and then go high. So it's just, as soon as I flip it on, it immediately goes high. The system wasn't properly resetting on power up, and that usually causes the machine to lock up since it tries to run before the voltages are all stable. The capacitor responsible for the timing on the reset had a damaged leg. It was physically damaged. I went ahead and replaced it, so let's try that again. Found a bad cap. Replace it with another 10 microfarad, 25 volt cap. So now when we flip the switch, 3, 2, 1, there's a delay. Let's try that again. So now when we flip the switch in 3, 2, 1, we got about a half-second delay. Perfect. All right, reset's fixed, but we're still getting 4 flashes on the dead test, and we get this screen if we boot it up without a cartridge installed. So moving back to using the scope, I checked the system clocks and they were all present and they all looked fine. Next, I started looking for bus contention issues where multiple chips are trying to drive the same line at the same time. And if you know you have a good PLA, then my experience is that often the problem is the CIAs or the ROMs. Both CIAs were desoldered, and sure enough, both CIAs were bad. Since we don't need them for the dead test to work, we'll just leave them out for now. Now, since obviously the CIAs aren't the only problem, I went ahead and desoldered both the kernel and basic ROMs and tested those, but they're just fine. Still, now I had sockets on the board and I won't need them for dead tests, so I went ahead and just left them off. Next, I discovered there are serious problems with the VIC-2 socket. So the next thing I got to do is replace the socket for the VIC-2. That VIC-2 tests perfectly fine in the ZIF64, so I don't think that's got any issues. So if I turn it on, see, we got nothing. Nothing at all. Push down on this. Nothing. There we go. Push really hard in the top left corner, and hey, look, we get the same garbage screen we were getting before, and it kind of comes and goes. Now, it's clearly a sign of a failing socket, so I went ahead and replaced that socket. While I was at it, the character ROM socket was replaced. It actually had a missing pin in it, and I also replaced the PLA socket because these sockets are clearly junk, and I just wanted to eliminate them as a problem. So at this point, I was still pretty much on the right track, and this was all just bog standard repair work. But this is where things took a turn for the worse. I pulled and tested the 4066 ICs, the color ROM, and the 7406 inverter, along with the 74LS373, and all checked out fine. Along the way, I did find a bad 74LS257, but it wasn't even the one related to the RAM bank where my errors are coming from. So replacing it was necessary, but had I been on a correct path of troubleshooting, I would have eventually found that as a problem later after repairing the problem that's causing me problems now, because it's a problem with my problems. And along the way, I also found that the 74LS258 was bad, but replacing it had no effect. I'm still getting the same errors on dead test. At this point, desperation was creeping in. I swapped out the C19 capacitor, which is the one that's associated with the voltage regulator, but still, no effect. I didn't really expect one, but I knew I'd be asked. So I even went so far as to go ahead and replace a 74LS139 because it seemed like I'd tried everything else that could be causing the issue, but that had no effect. At this point, the board was so modified with sockets that it didn't even feel like the original Silver Label board that I need for the next video. This is not how I wanted it to go. Maybe I can't fix this one. I finally gave in and texted a couple friends that I think I'd finally met my match, that I'd found a Commodore 64 that I can't fix. So then at a local users group meetup, I was talking to a friend and he kind of set me straight. He pointed out that I had tunnel vision on that 5-volt regulator running hot. My entire time, I was looking for something that was shorted, basically. The early boards, he pointed out, run hotter than the later ones, and that was just exacerbated by the missing heatsink. The overheating regulator was not my issue. He pointed out something that I hadn't even considered. Try a different diagnostic cartridge. Of course, that's the DesTest Max, which I didn't have yet. I'd been intending to make one, but I didn't have the right cartridge blank. But then he pointed out that all I had to do was burn a new EEPROM and put it on a regular dead test cartridge. So I burned a new DesTest ROM and put it into another dead test cartridge that I just had kicking around. When I ran it, it showed me something I wasn't able to see with a regular dead test cartridge. It showed that bits 0, 2, and 4 on the data bus were all bad. And the chips responsible for those bits? The one that had been getting flagged all along, and the 2 to its immediate left. This was not a coincidence. So I went back to the RAM that had been flagged as bad for most of this process. And I carefully examined the sockets and the associated traces, but I could see nothing wrong. So next, I went on to checking continuity. And then I finally found it. There was a broken trace between the last working RAM chip and the first one that was showing as bad. It wasn't just a random break. This trace feeds on to the 2 chips to its left, which explains why all 3 were affected. I desoldered the socket on the chip that was showing as bad, but I couldn't find any problems. So then I removed the socket from the working RAM chip just before it. It also looked just fine. At first, I couldn't see anything wrong, but then as I was cleaning the pads with a cotton swab and alcohol, it snagged on something. And that pulled the trace up just enough that I could see that there was just a tiny break between the actual trace and the pad. So I fixed it with a solder bridge and reinstalled both sockets. That's not really a proper repair, so then I also installed a bodge wire between the two pins that were affected. Okay, so after everything I've put myself through on this board, I'm not quite ready to celebrate yet. Then it's time to see if DesTest Max can actually make it past the first screen, and will you look at that? We're making progress. Next, let's hook up the diagnostic cartridge with a full harness and see where we get. It looks like we're still showing one error. It says that the SID and the associated control port are bad. Fortunately, this is normal on many of these early boards. In the diagnostic cartridge manual, it notes that they installed some capacitors with different values in the factory that can cause this error, but it'll still work fine. I checked, and those caps are indeed 750 picofarad instead of the 2200 picofarads that the test expects. So, now for a real test to make sure the machine is working as intended. First, we'll boot to BASIC, and just for the first time actually see our blue Commodore startup screen from this machine. Yes! Let's run a quick BASIC program and make sure it's working. That looks good. This machine fought me harder than any other Commodore 64 I've ever worked on, but it's back from the dead. And let's be honest, did the machine fight me or was I fighting myself? And what better way to celebrate another working Commodore 64 than a game of Moon Patrol while we talk about the lessons learned in this repair, because I think they're significant. This restoration taught me a few things, and honestly, most of them were things I already knew, but in the moment I still ignored them. First, this is not something to be rushed. I mean, if all you have is a bad PLA, that's a quick swap, but when you're dealing with a real issue, you gotta slow down and work through it properly. The moment you start rushing is the moment you start making mistakes. Second, guessing is not diagnosing. Yes, sometimes you have to take an educated guess, but swapping components blindly without solid evidence just wastes time and leads to unnecessary board modifications. Third, when you're stuck, step away, rethink, or ask for help. I spent days chasing what I thought was a power issue that wasn't even an issue. But when I finally talked to a friend, it only took a few minutes to put me back in the correct mindset. But I think the real mistake I made on this board was made before I even opened the case. My mindset going in wasn't about solving a puzzle or methodically diagnosing a machine. I wanted this board to be ready to go as quickly as possible. So now, this is a fully working Silver Label Commodore 64. But honestly, I'm a little upset with myself. This machine deserved better and it didn't need all that work, and now it's been through way more than it should have. It's no longer the representative board of the Silver Label machine that I wanted for that other video, so I decided to go ahead and pull another machine for the Evolution video and make this video for you with this one. You're actually not going to believe what I found in that third machine that's actually being used in the Evolution video. Since this one's not even in an original Silver Label case, I'm wondering what I should do with it. I suppose with all these sockets, it'll be easy to service in the future. I was thinking it might make a great diagnostic board for somebody in our local users group, kind of like my ZIF 64. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you think I should do with this board. The 64 Commodore episode that this machine was supposed to be used in will be right here when it's ready. In the meantime, check out this video where I repaired a Commodore 64 with about a dozen bad ICs, and that repair was done the right way. Thanks for coming!